Hi guys, welcome to another video. Chanel have just released their financial results and it is all a complete disaster. What is going on at Chanel? Their revenue is down, their profits are down, their cash surplus is down. It is a disaster. Or is it? Let's get going. I am always super excited when I can get my hands on some of the financials for some of these large companies. Although we don't get to see all of it because they don't have to release all of it. But sometimes the headlines don't really show the true picture. So I thought I would just go through some of it. Nothing technical. We're going to talk about the bags and the ready to wear and all of the other things because it is all very relevant. So the headlines for Chanel are that their revenue is down by, some reports are saying 4%. The thing I've seen says 5%. That is a lot of pounds. It is a lot of pounds. It might be 4 or 5%, which doesn't feel a lot, but in pounds, in actual money, it is a lot. Their operating profit is down by 30%. 30%. Now, if you look at that just on the face of it, you would think, what a disaster. They are having an absolute disaster. Sometimes the headlines are there and everybody starts to think, oh, Chanel are having a huge problem. Their results are showing reduced profits, reduced revenue. However, sometimes companies make decisions to take a hit in a certain year in order to do whatever they want to do to future-proof things. So sometimes it's a strategic decision. Sometimes they just haven't had as good a year, but sometimes you're comparing to a time where they have had exponential growth in all areas. So let's just break it all down a little bit because it's safe to say Chanel are doing absolutely fine. They've got a really strong balance sheet. They've got cash surplus. It may be lower than last year, but there are reasons why it is lower. So Chanel are doing absolutely fine. They're doing absolutely fine. But does this mean the end of their ridiculous price increases? Well, I've got something to say about that. So yeah, keep watching for that. It's very hard to see the intricate details of these figures because they don't have to publish it to the public. So we don't really get to see. But from reading the reports that I've read, from seeing the statements that have been put out by the CEO, the CFO of Chanel, and of course they make it look amazing. Of course they're going to put a report out, a statement that says everything is wonderful and they've had a fantastic year and everything else, because they don't want to worry the business world. However, they have invested heavily this year. You can see from the numbers they have invested heavily in infrastructure. They've obviously expanded their locations. They've invested a lot, and when I say invested, they have spent a lot in increasing their wage count, which means they have taken on more people. So they are not in any way trying to downsize anything. They are expanding. They have also said in their statement they have exponentially grown over the last few years, and we know that they have, both in terms of we can just see how different locations have popped up, but also we know they've had huge price increases. I remember when I bought my classic flat, which is over there somewhere, it was 4,000 something, about £4,500, which at the time was horrific amount of money for a bag. Oh dear. Now it is more than double that for the same exact bag. And that is probably in about the last 7 or 8 years, I think. I'm trying to think when I bought it. Something like that. So the prices have doubled within definitely about 7 years on certain bags, So I remember over COVID, at first Chanel weren't doing very well because I think everybody was frightened over COVID and people weren't spending until a point when they were spending. But Chanel do not offer any online sales. So all of these sales that Louis Vuitton were getting, and even Hermes, they have an online presence. I think Chanel are the only one that don't have an online presence for their fashion and their bags. So, and there's no other outlets for them. They are in store. You cannot buy them through Net-a-Porter or Farfetch or any of those websites, and they don't have their own online presence. So they were really suffering because none of us could go out. We couldn't go into the stores to spend. It did get to a point though where sales associates were able to ship things out and you could pay remotely for things. And I remember Chanel coming out with a 20% increase. And I remember thinking, this is disgraceful. We are going through a global pandemic and they dare to put their prices up. And then they did it again. And then they did it again. There was about 4 price increases, significant ones, within about 2 years, I think. I think each time it was 20% or 15%. Well, it doesn't take long, does it, for it to double, which is what has happened. However, I said back in the day, I've done many a video on this, I said back in the day, it can't continue. You cannot continue at that level of price increase. It is impossible. You will price yourself out very, very quickly. And I think what Chanel's plan was always to do was to get to that similar sort of price bracket to Hermes. They were challenging Hermes. To me, they're two completely different brands. That's a whole other story, but that was the philosophy on the bags in particular. The ready-to-wear has always been extremely expensive. Anyway, they have had these huge price increases. They had to slow down because it is impossible to keep going at that rate. So I think that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing that some of the newer bags, and let's just talk about bags in general because that's what I'm mainly interested in. I cannot tell from the financial statements that I've seen, from the reports that I've seen, how well the bags in general are doing. We don't have enough detail to see whether their revenue, profits, margins, whatever are down with regard to the bags. And if it is down, and I assume that it will be, then which bags in particular are doing well, which ones aren't, we don't know. But I would hazard a guess that the classic flaps, I think they just turn them over. I don't think they'll be flying off the shelves. Some of the VVIPs who can afford all of it will possibly still be buying some of these. I think they've priced them so high that they don't have to sell as many, do they? They don't. So they're going for more profit and going for less volume on things like that. I think the new bags that have come out, like the Chanel 25, which I really like, I'm getting a little bit obsessed with it. I do really like it. I think it's in the region of £5.5, which is a lot of money, but it's in the same region as a Chanel 19. I think the Chanel, is it the 22, is about the same. They haven't gone up to the 6, 7, 8,000s for those types of bags. So yeah, anyway, I am not sure what is going on, but I suspect that they won't be doing quite as well on the bags. I think part of it is they don't have a lot of offerings for me personally. I don't see a lot of bags in Chanel, and I don't know, there's an odd one that I really like, but they don't have the appeal for me personally as Louis Vuitton does for me. So I don't know whether other people are thinking that. I remember watching YouTube a few years ago and all the unboxings were Chanel. It was always Chanel. It was classic flaps, it was the trendy, it was the Chanel 19, it then became the Chanel 22. I've hardly seen any. In fact, have I seen even one unboxing of the Chanel 25? I don't think I have. I really don't think I have. Now, whether it's just that it's not on my radar and some of them are out there, I just don't follow those people, for example. I haven't seen them. But if you think even 2 or 3 years ago, people were unboxing bag after bag after bag, and it was always Chanel. And where have they gone? So I think that middle ground, we've talked about this before, the super rich will always just spend. The people who are not in the market for luxury won't be affected by this. And it's the people in the middle ground, like myself, who have to save up for these things and have to think carefully about which things that they would like to buy and which ones they believe are worth the money to you. And I think there's a lot of us that feel the same about Chanel, that the prices are just crazy. And we look at what other things we can buy for that money. And for me, I was saying, oh, what could I buy at Louis Vuitton? for that money I could probably buy 2 bags, and that's where my head goes sometimes. So I assume that the bags for that middle ground, which is a huge part of their customer base, I just don't think they'll be doing as well. I think ready to wear is doing sort of okay. I think the beauty and fragrance is where they're making their major money. That is my view on this. I think that category is just very profitable. It doesn't really get affected too much by the economy. It does a little bit, but if you still want that little bit of luxury, if you just want, I don't know, you just want a little bit of a new little eyeshadow thing, or a lipstick, or a lip balm, or a little bit of skincare, or some perfume, you sort of still can just do that, and they are still nice gifts for people and things like that, where a handbag is it's a different mindset to buy a handbag of £5,000 compared to a little bit of makeup that is very expensive for makeup, but it's still £20 or whatever. So I think that they will have a lot of volume of that, and I think the margins will be good. I think the fine jewellery and the watches, according to this report, have had dynamic growth. But what we don't know is what it went from and what it's gone to. So it could have done really well, but it's what you're comparing to that we don't know. Something can have doubled and you think, oh my, wow, it's doubled. But if it only was a really small category to start with, doubling actually isn't that significant to the company as a whole. But it's a good headline to say that the sales have doubled, for example. Anyway, it seems to have dynamic growth. Again, it's a luxury that people maybe want to invest more in. Maybe they feel that their money is safer in fine jewellery than it is in costume jewellery and bags and shoes and things like that. So anyway, I think at the end of all of this, we still love what we love. We're going to buy what we want to buy, but we have to make different choices. And Chanel have to realise that middle ground of people are the ones that are the bulk of their customer base. They just have to be. So I think the price increases are going to slow down. They're going to have to. But I do think that Chanel are still in very, very good shape. They have made decisions, they have invested money in other things, they have increased their workforce. There's certain things that will hit their profitability. They're looking ahead into what they're doing in the future. Nobody needs to worry about Chanel. They're still making a lot of money, a lot. Anyway, I would like to know what you guys think. When was the last time you saw Chanel unboxing? I want to see more of them, but maybe not as many of us are buying Chanel at the minute. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on another one.